The bruise on Clara's cheek was the kind of mark no woman should ever carry. It was swollen and purple, shaped like fingers, and she tried with all her strength to hide it, but nothing could hide it from Silas Barrett. He saw everything, and when he saw that bruise, the world around him seemed to stop. The Wyoming morning was dry and hot, the dust rising in soft clouds around Clara's shoes as she walked the long road toward the Ironwood Ranch. She had walked 5 miles alone, her bonnet pulled low, praying no one would look at her too closely. She only wanted to reach the ranch, teach the children, and keep her head down. She needed this job to survive. She needed peace. But peace was far away. As she stepped onto the wide wooden porch, her hands shaking, she reached for the heavy door knocker. Before she could touch it, the door swung open. Silas Barrett stood there. He filled the doorway like a mountain carved from the land itself. Broad shoulders, flannel shirt darkened by honest work. A cold and steady gaze. His presence felt like a wall of strength, something solid and unmovable. It was a man people respected, a man people feared when they needed to. His eyes landed on her face. Clara tried to turn away, but it was too late. He saw the bruise, his jaw tightened, his chest rising with a slow, dangerous breath. "Look at me, Clara," he said. His voice wasn't loud, but it shook something deep inside her. It was the kind of voice that could calm a wild horse or freeze a man in his tracks. Clara lifted her chin, her eyes stinging with shame. She wanted to disappear, to melt into the porch floor. But Silas looked at her like he could see straight through the lies she wasn't even brave enough to tell yet. "Who did this to you?" he asked. The words were quiet, but they carried more force than a shout. The air around them grew still. Clara opened her mouth, reaching for the same lie she had been trying to believe. It was an accident, Mr. Barrett. He tripped on the boardwalk. It's silly, really. He shouldn't. No. Silas cut in, taking one step forward. His boots thudded against the wood, and the sound echoed like a warning. "That isn't from tripping. Those are finger marks. Someone grabbed your face." His gaze didn't soften. If anything, it sharpened, narrowing like a hunter spotting a threat. Clara felt her breath catch. It was right. He knew. And there was no safe place to hide from the truth. Tears gathered in her eyes. She knew he expected an answer, but saying the name felt like swallowing fire. She lowered her head. "It was Elias," she whispered. "He wouldn't accept that I ended the courting." Silas didn't speak at first. The silence stretched long and heavy, filled with a storm she could feel building inside him. His fists curled at his sides. A dark look crossed his face. The kind of look that meant something bad was about to happen to the man who hurt her. "How long has this been going on?" he asked. 3 months since I ended it," she said softly. "But the violence started those weeks ago." Silas took a slow breath. It didn't calm him. It only focused him. "Did you go to the sheriff?" "No. Elias is powerful. He said no one would believe a school teacher over him." Silas' jaw clenched. For a moment, he looked like he might turn around, saddle his horse, and ride straight into town to settle the matter with his own hands. Before he could speak again, the sound of small boots pattered on the stairs inside the house. Miss Clara. Caleb and Rose, Silas's 8-year-old twins, came running down with bright smiles. Rose stopped mid-step, her eyes landing on the bruise. "Miss Clara, you got a hurt?" she asked, her voice soft. Clara froze, her heart twisting, but Silas moved immediately. He stepped in front of her, blocking the children's view with his broad frame. "Miss Clara had a small accident," he said gently, though his voice still carried steel. "Sis all right. Go set up your slates. She'll be in shortly." The children obeyed, though they looked worried. When they disappeared upstairs, Silas turned back to Clara. His eyes were darker than before, filled with something fierce. "My study, 1 hour," he said. "We're going to talk about this." It wasn't anger. It was something deeper, something dangerous, something protective. Clara nodded, her heart racing. For the next hour, she tried to teach the children, but her hands shook so badly she could hardly hold the chalk. When the clock chimed, Hattie came to take over. Clara walked with trembling steps down the hall to the study. When she entered, Silas was standing by the window, looking out at the mountains. He turned as she closed the door. "Sit," he said softly. "She bath." Silas leaned against the desk, his eyes locked on hers. "I've already sent 2 men to town," he began. "From now on, you don't leave this ranch alone. You ride with a guard. If you need anything, you tell me or Hattie." Clara shook her head. "Mr. Barrett, I can't ask you to." "You didn't ask," he said, stepping closer. He crouched in front of her so they were a level. "You aren't just the governess. You care for my children and I don't let people who matter to me get hurt." His words struck her like a warm wave. For months she had felt alone, small, weak. But looking into his eyes, she felt seen, protected, safe. Her heart fluttered with a feeling she had never expected. And outside the study window, the wind moved across the plains, carrying with it a promise. Silas Barrett was not finished. He would find the man who hurt her and he would end this. Clara awoke the next morning with a strange mix of peace and worry twisting in her chest. Peace because she finally felt safe on the ranch. Worry because Silas Barrett had taken her pain into his own hands and that was a heavy weight for any man. But Silas didn't seem bothered by the weight. If anything, he carried it like it belonged to him. The ranch had changed overnight. 2 of Silas's most trusted hands, Dutch and Red, now rode the property line day and night. Their horses moved slow and steady, rifles in their scabbards, eyes sharp. It was a silent warning to anyone who dared to cross the ironwood fence. Clara noticed everything. Dutch would tip his hat to her when she saw him near the barn. Red, a man who hardly spoke, gave her a gentle nod. They were there for her because Silas had made a promise. For the first time in months, she slept through the night. No footsteps outside her door, no panic twisting in her ribs, no dreams of Eliza's hand around her face. But peace brought something else, something she didn't know how to handle. Silas. It began appearing in places she didn't expect. When she taught the children, he would stand in the doorway with his head in his hands, pretending to check on the woodpile or the stove. But Clara knew better. He was checking on her. Every time she lifted her head, she found his dark eyes on her, watching, making sure she was all right, making sure the bruise was healing, making sure she wasn't carrying fear alone. It made her heart beat faster in a way she didn't understand. The twins noticed, though. Children always did. Caleb asked one afternoon, looking up from his reading. "How come you're here? You ain't gone with the herd." Silas shifted, clearly caught. "I may not to know what his kids are learning," he muttered. But his eyes slid toward Clara, and she felt her cheeks warm. The quiet days didn't last long. One hot Thursday afternoon, Clara stood in the kitchen, helping Hattie slice apples for Pa. The air was warm and sweet with the scent of sugar and spice. For a moment, Clara felt almost normal. Then the sound of galloping hooves shattered the calm. Fast, hard, angry. Clara froze, her knife hovering midair. A man shouted from the yard, "Clara, I know you're in there." Her blood ran cold. It wasn't Elias, but it was almost as bad. Hargo, one of his hired men, a brute who did whatever Elias didn't want to touch himself. Her hand trembled violently. Attie stepped back from the window at the same moment the shouting grew louder. Mr. Thorne wants a word. Come out now. Clara felt her breath lock in her chest. This couldn't be happening. Not here. Not on the ranch. Not inside the walls where she had finally felt safe. But before the panic could take her completely, a large, calloused hand reached past her and slammed the window shut, making her gasp. Silas. She hadn't even heard him walking. His chest rose and fell with slow fury. His jaw was tight, his eyes fixed on the yard with the look of a man ready for war. Is that his man? Silas asked. Clara nodded, her throat too tight to speak. Silas didn't hesitate. He strode to the back door, threw it open, and stepped outside. His boots hit the porch like thunder. Clara crept closer, her heart racing. Who rides on my land? Silas Bejobeth. Hargo shifted uneasily on his horse. He hadn't expected to find Silas home. I'm here for the girl. Hargos Pat. Mr. Torne says she needs to come back with me. Silas walked down the steps slow and calm, but there was danger in every movement. You can tell Elias Thorne that Clara is under ironwood protection now, Silas said. Hargos coughed. Torne says she belongs to him. The air snapped. Silas took one step closer and his voice dropped to something cold and deadly. You tell Thorne, he said, that if he or one of his men sends so much as a shadow across her path again, he'll be dealing with me, not the law. Me. Hargos bravado cracked. He yanked the reins and spurred the horse away in a cloud of dust. Silas turned and came inside. He won't bother you again today, he said. The moment their eyes met, Clara broke. All the fear she had carried, weeks of it, crashed over her. Her body shook. A sob escaped before she could stop it. And Silas moved. He crossed the room in 2 long strides and wrapped his arms around her. A wall of warmth and strength closed around her shaking body. Clara buried her face in his chest, gripping the fabric of his shirt. Silas held her close, his hand gentle on the back of her head. You're safe, he murmured. I promise you, Clara, you're safe. For the first time in her life, she believed the man's promise. But none of them knew Elias was waiting, watching, planning, and the shadows were not done with them yet. Night settled over the Ironwood ranch like a heavy blanket. The house was quiet, the stars bright, the wind soft against the windows. Clara thought the worst was behind her. She thought Silas's warning would keep Elias away. But danger has a way of finding cracks in even the strongest walls. Clara was heading upstairs after putting the twins to bed. Her hair was loose, falling down her back, and for the first time in weeks, she felt something close to peace. Then she heard it, shouting, boots on the porch. Acras. Get your hands off me. I have a right. Clara's heart stopped. She knew that voice. She would know it anywhere. Elias. The name hit her like a bullet. She rushed to the top of the stairs. The door was wide open. Dutch and Red were forcing a wild, drunken Elias backward into the night. His eyes were full of rage and madness. His clothes dirty, his hair wild. Silas stood a few feet away. It looked like a storm about to break. Clara froze on the staircase, gripping the banister with trembling hands. Do you think you can take what belongs to me? Elias shouted, spit free. Do you think you can hide her from me, Barret? Silas stepped forward slow and controlled, his face carved from stone. Clara was never yours, he said, his voice low and dangerous. And if you don't leave this land right now, you're going to learn what happens when a man threatens someone under my roof. Quote. The words struck Clara's chest like a spark. Someone under my roof. Someone he claimed. Someone he would fight for. For the first time, that claim didn't feel threatening. It felt like safety. Elias followed Silas's gaze and spotted Clara standing on the stairs in her simple night dress, pale and shaking. His mouth twisted into a sick smile. This isn't over, Clara, he screamed. You belong to me. Dutch and Red dragged him off the porch as he kicked and cursed. His voice echoed through the yard until the door slammed shut, cutting off the sound. Clara's knees buckled. Silas was already moving. He sprinted up the stairs 2 steps at a time and caught her before she could fall. His arms wrapped around her tight, steadying her trembling body. Breathe, Clara, he murmured. I've got you. She pressed her face into his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. His hand cradled the back of her head, holding her as if she were made of something fragile and precious. Minutes passed, maybe longer. Silas finally pulled back just enough to look into her eyes. Come with me, he said softly. He led her to his private library on the first floor. A quiet room lined with books, warm light, and a soft sofa near the fire. He wrapped a blanket around her shoulders and sat beside her. Close enough that she felt the heat of his body. Clara, he said gently. That man is dangerous. But I am going to make sure he never comes near you again. I don't care what it costs. She swallowed hard. Why are you doing this for me, Silas? I'm just the governess. His jaw tightened. He leaned in closer. You aren't just anything, he said. You take care of my children. You brought life back into this house. You've become important to me. His eyes held hers. Honest, fierce, vulnerable. Clara's heart pounded. She wanted to speak, to tell him she felt the same, that she felt safe in his presence in a way she had never felt before. Before she could answer, Hata appeared at the doorway. Mr. Barrett, she said quietly. Sheriff Miller is here. Reality rushed back in. Salas stood, taking Clara's hand. We finished this tonight. Quote. The hours that followed were long and exhausting. Clara told the sheriff everything. Every threat, every bruise, every moment of fear. Silas never left her side. By morning, Elias was behind bars. For the first time, the shadow over her life lifted. Weeks passed. Peace returned to the ranch like sunlight after a long storm. Clara walked with her head high. Silas seemed lighter, though, as if protecting her had awakened a part of him that had been asleep for years. Then, one crisp evening on the veranda. Everything changed. Silas had asked her to join him for supper. Lanterns hung from the beams, glowing warm in the soft night. He wore a clean suit, his hair combed, his eyes nervous in a way Clara had never seen. After the meal, he stood and walked around the table. Clara, he said quietly. When you came to this ranch, you were looking for safety. He promised to protect you. But I want more than that. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Clara gasped. Silas Barrett dropped to one knee. I want to laugh with you, he said. His voice shook with emotion. I want to wake up every morning beside you. I want you to help me raise Caleb and Rose. Clara, will you marry me? Her hand covered her mouth, tears streaming down her cheeks. Yes, she whispered. Yes, Silas 1,000 times. Yes. Silas rose, lifting her into his arms as if she were weightless. He spun her once, and her laughter echoed across the dark Wyoming plains. Upstairs, Caleb and Rose watched through the window, cheering in secret. They married under the golden autumn leaves with the ranch hands and townsfolk gathered around them. Even Silas's stern mother wiped a tear from her cheek. When Clara said, I do, she felt something she had never felt before. She felt home. She felt loved. She felt safe. Silas Barrett had kept his promise. No one would ever hurt her again.